Friday, April, somehow the 7th, 2023, and I am here with a great crowd. I have Gordon Firemark, Elsie Escobar, and Hillary Rousseau, special guest in for today's fuzzy logic on reuses, remixes, and reviews of podcasts. We're going to discuss, are they hurtful? Are they harmful? What are some things to watch out for? What are some places they can help us get our message out? And most importantly, if we get in a pickle with them, where do we turn? Please roll that intro, Bree. Here we go. Hey, love all the intro music. I want to jump right into it though, because my goodness, this is everywhere. I looked up right before we hopped on. I looked up YouTube videos that are, what do I do when my content is stolen? Like very straight to the point, Gen Z style. What do I do when my content is stolen, or somebody stole my content? Because it's like a review of the review of the review, and I got such a litany of of things popping up. I'm being told my mic is out, so I want to hop right in though. Elsie, do you have a time that's happened to one of you or somebody you're close with? And let's go around quickly. Take like a 30, 45, 90 seconds. Give us a time, if each of us could, where that is in impacting you or your inner circle, because I think it hits us legally, but it also hits us in the chest sometimes when it's us or our people.
Oh, are you talking about just YouTube specifically?
No, in general, a podcast, an instance where somebody is ripping off content. I know you have one that's really close to your heart that you've been following, but in general, a time where somebody went in and yoinked audio and didn't attribute it, or yoinked a video and didn't attribute it. Oh, a structure, an image. There's all these instances of reuse and remix that, as a creator and as an intellectual property and just as a person, sometimes kind of crushes us when it feels like they copy pasted us from any format.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. So at this point in time, I just want to shout out somebody that I really admire on social. Her name is Renee Brooks, and you can find her at Black Girl Lost Keys. That is her brand. She's on Twitter at BLK Girl Lost Keys all together. And she's been posting actually just the past couple of days about that this has been happening to her. And I think she's bringing this attention in terms of creators, right? So she's one of those folks that can write very succinctly. Her quotes are amazing, and she writes kind of incredibly as a tweet, right? So people take her words all the time and they're very inspirational, but she has started to see that there's a lot of her screenshots of her quotes, of her tweets without attribution that are popping out everywhere. She actually, I think, Bree, you can share the thread that she posted yesterday where she took screenshots of just her words that have been shared over and over and over and over again on places like Instagram as a little square quote with zero attribution, with everything going to the people who are posting it. And it's really inspirational and it hits home for lots of people. Same thing is happening on on TikTok for her, where there's some TikTok accounts that are getting hundreds of thousands of engagement for her quote. And she's getting zero from this. So something to be said about people profiting, even if it's not monetarily profit other folks, just visibility and recognition of the work as a whole. And the fact that she really is making her living off of creating content. And so it's something for us to look at. So that's my example to bring to the table.
Appreciate that. And since it's so recent and so relevant, I wanted to make sure I brought it up. These are some of the screenshots that she posted. And you can see there's dozens of them. It's not one instance. It went viral with no attribution, which is the worst way it seems like it could go. How about for you, Gordon? How many times does this hit close? I know in your profession, it's probably all the time. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the number of times per day that I, as an entertainment and media lawyer, have to look at questions about they stole my stuff or how do I get permission to use the stuff or whatever. And then I have to multiply that number of times per day times the number of days I've been practicing law for 31 years. So, this is what I do as a lawyer, is address these kinds of concerns and focus my energy on questions of intellectual property and where those boundaries are, and so on. In my own personal stuff, I've been pretty fortunate in that the stuff that I've had other people copy and lift is stuff that I've given away and put out there for free anyway on purpose. But where it stings is, hey, I give away that stuff in order to attract an audience, to drive traffic to my stuff, to get them onto my email list and things like that. And when somebody uses one of my products or writings or creations and doesn't give me attribution, that hurts me economically. And so it does happen. I count my blessings that it doesn't happen to me often. Maybe that's a reflection on the quality of what I'm putting out there. I don't know. But
or on the JD at the end of your name. The worst person to copy is somebody with a JD at the end of their name.
Yeah. So but it's there every day.
Yeah, and I can't wait because I know we're going to be able to tap into those variety of experiences, whether it's in the I guess I call it traditional media or entertainment industry up in Hollywood where you are, all the way to us in our individual little closets shooting podcasts. It's happening all the time. I want to take a moment now to introduce our guest of honor, who is so gratefully joining us today, Hillary Rousseau of Holistically Speaking. Hillary, I've been told that you have a couple that have happened to you. Do you have one that was most crushing to you? And tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Crushing, I don't know. I would have to say, but when Bree reached out to me, I was like, oh, girl, welcome to my world. I mean, I've been in media for, 25, almost 30 years now. And in this age of social media, it is so common to see this happen because it's almost like, what I was thinking about it before I came on today. I was thinking it reminds me a little bit of WebMD. When you're feeling ill or something comes up, you instantly want to go to WebMD to check to see if that you have that thing, or Wikipedia. But in this age of social media and really living in this global village, meaning everything's available to us at the touch of a button, it's really easy to become misinformed, even though you think you are becoming informed, if that makes sense. And for me, this happened in the last year, which really made me see how powerful the internet can be. I was considering working with a marketing company, and I've been on TV for, since I walked out of college, and they gave me some examples of how they would repurpose some of my video. And I said, send me some examples. Let me look, because that's being smart in our business. And they sent them to me, and I was like, okay, let's keep working on them. But what they wound up doing, I was kind of scrolling through TikTok. They posted my videos without my permission. They did not give me any. They did not credit me at all. So, and these were with some bigwigs, by the way. These were like the big people in the health and wellness and holistic world, the Jay Shettys, the Dr. Mark Hymans, a lot of people, all these people that in this field that I work in, and none of them are getting, are being credited, and that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah.
And I instantly reached out to them. I was like, you got to take that down or you credit me.
That's awesome that you did it. And it leads to a pretty foundational question to this whole discussion that I'll ask Mr. Firemark JD to jump in on a little bit, which is when you get in that moment, when we reach out to YouTube, when we reach out to Facebook, when we reach out to even maybe our own labels, if we're a musician, all the different places, or our host, if it's a podcast, who would we reach out to, and what is it called from a legal standpoint? Any power? Do we have power to get that down, or is it just up to the private company to do it?
That is a great and vexing question, because these companies do their best to sort of, I don't want to say it's an active concealment of the contact person, but they have to guard their resources pretty carefully. And if you reach out to YouTube or Facebook, Meta, and I've never even tried with TikTok, but I imagine that they treat it the same way. It's very hard to get in contact with an actual person. You may be dealing with an AI. You're often dealing with a web form or something like that, and some Probably a pretty low level person is reviewing the initial intake on that stuff, and they have a set of formulaic responses. I had a situation just yesterday where my client was reaching out to a podcasting platform over the choice of the title of someone else's show that infringes on her registered trademark for the title of her show. And it wasn't a, hey, please take this down, because trademark law doesn't have the same mechanisms as copyright law does. But what she did was she wrote to them saying, hey, I can't track down a contact for the person responsible for this podcast. Would you please forward this message? And their response was, we don't take down things. And that was all that, it wasn't, they didn't even read the whole message. So that it is a real problem that we confront. So who are you trying to reach? Well, when I do it, I tend to look up who's the general counsel of the company, and I write it to their attention and let them delegate it to the right person in the company to deal with things. But that's hard to do. And, again, I have that lawyer letterhead on my side when I write that letter, so it does get some attention. But not everybody can do that. And on a do-it-yourself level, you are often stuck with the form on the website, or you search in the privacy policy or the terms of use for the site, and that's where you find the contact information for complaints.
Gotcha. I appreciate that insight, and I want to just jump on it before we move off it, Gordon. Is that something that, if that's happening to us right now, or happening to somebody that's listening or watching right now, they can, like, that's an area you're pretty cozy with, right? So somebody could, not to over promote you, but also to promote where it's going to be helpful, is if somebody's concerned about that kind of thing, it's cool if they reach out to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have to make a living. I have to guard my resources a little bit. So, but if you're having trouble and encountering problems, shoot me a question, and I'm happy to try to point you in the right direction. If not, do it for you.
Yeah. And potentially get involved from a service level. That is, like you said, what you do. So I just want to point out that, like, not only do you have this knowledge because you've researched it and studied it, but also it's an area that you can actively support someone in.
Absolutely.
And have the credentials to do it, which is awesome that we have somebody like that here. Speaking of having the credentials, Elsie, when it comes to the podcast industry, specifically, if we just narrow right down into the place that is your heart, your soul, the place that you helped build, you and Gordon have helped build, but really you at Libsyn especially, I would imagine, have been at the core of these questions arising sometimes, because it didn't exist before Libsyn, because there wasn't a podcasting before Libsyn in a lot of ways. Is this something that you all face, and how do you hear it being talked about, if at all, in the podcast industry, in the circles that you run in, which are the circles of podcasting?
I think when we hear stuff that has to do with attribution in terms of podcasting, it really has to do more from the musical perspective. And as I'm talking from the industry side of things, I'm not talking about from the creator side of things. Podcasters using copyrighted music is really big still. Podcasters often think that they can just use whatever song they want inside of their content. And, platforms right now, especially Spotify, because they do have like robots working at this stuff, often find bits of songs that are not to be used inside a podcast. And they do send DMCA takedown notifications of certain to Libsyn, so that we have to take, whatever, when they are like that kind of a legal thing, those are taken down, or that conversation is shared with the creator, at which time the creator can kind of take a look at what's going on and really see whether or not they actually have the rights and all of that. There's conversations that go back and forth. But oftentimes that's where it like really lies into things. From that perspective, it's a little bit harder, I think, and we don't see it as often if somebody uses like a snippet of somebody else's show, because most of the time they're not being used to copy somebody else's work. Usually they're used to illustrate a point or a conversation. What we did see and have seen also is that because there are a lot of free podcast hosts out there, and they're able to sometimes grab entire podcasts and post them as their own. And then they start to monetize the entire feed, which is one of the reasons the block tag for RSS feeds has started to be implemented in a lot of podcast hosting platforms, because this started to happen. People were sort of grabbing that RSS feed and then just starting up podcast with it's exactly the same thing, right?
It's a clone of the feed,
yeah. And they would start to monetize them, because with a lot of the free podcast hosting platforms, one of the ways that they make money, because you do have to make money, is through ads. And so they were just having that in there, and they would start to make money based on the content, somebody else's content. And it really was the ads that were garnering that. And that was really rough, because obviously people would find out, the podcaster would find out, and they would have to reach out like, this is not my thing, and you got to take that down. So it was taken down, and it was addressed, and it did start. It's not that as big of an issue, but it is still happening. Some feeds are still being cloned here and there, but again, we had to kind of move into providing that opportunity to have a block tag. And what that means is it's sort of like a change of ad. It's like a double opt-in kind of a thing. You know what I mean? If somebody's trying to grab something, they need the code to be able to do the other thing. So it's like that. So you can't just redirect without showing ownership of your feed. And it's essentially what that block tag does. It just prevents somebody from redirecting that feed without proper paperwork, if you will.
How would somebody know if they had a block built in? That's like brand new information for me. I'm so curious about that. If I were to go to one of my host sites, would that tell me, or would I have to message them and ask them?
To ask them what? To block the? Usually it's in the way that when you start to sign up for accounts, it's a setting. Yeah, it's a simple setting. It's not like block my feed. It's nothing. It's it's very simple. It's not as scary from the content creator, and it's built into the platform, so it's nothing scary, right? But you can definitely set it up. And mind you, I mean, that gets us to other issues that maybe we can talk at a different time that have nothing to do with this. But if you do have a co-host and you guys break up, and then who owns the feed, and they want to take it, and now that person has it blocked, and now how you get it, that's a whole other conversation. But that's also an issue. So you always have to think about it from those perspectives as well, where, you would think that that's a really positive thing, but there's times where it could not be a positive thing, especially if maybe it's your work and somebody else has it now blocked and you can't get it. So there's all kinds of nuance to all of this stuff in terms of creators.
Thanks for breaking that down. I like that you made sure it's not scary. I appreciate that. I like that it's not scary and B, easy to get a hold of. But that was like new insight for me. So I really appreciate that. It's been a while since I listed or launched a new podcast solo to even have seen that setting. So it's neat that that's included, and I appreciate that. I mean, that's the podcast industry doing what it does, which is protecting people. Don't you think, Gordon? I feel like that we do that as well as anyone. I feel like it's going to pick up, though, don't you, Gordon? I guess that would be my question. You've been on YouTube for a while.
Yeah.
And I think the YouTube podcast thing, for instance, that could change things a little bit.
Well, YouTube also has those algorithms that spot the infringing music and other material, and they have that as a it benefits them, because being able to know what's where on their service allows them to monetize with advertising. It also allows them to protect themselves against problems from the record industry, the music industry, that they've made deals now that says, hey, if you spot music in your content, monetize it and give us a portion of that money. And so that's how they go about that. So it's in their economic self-interest to do that. But again, they aren't able to detect a snippet from a podcast episode or a snippet from much else. Some television programs and films, they're now able to do it. But the real onus is on the content owner to whack the mole every time something is coming up and being copied without your permission. I think that's just the world we're living in now, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I guess AI and the algorithms will get better as we go, but for the short term, that's where we are, and that's what we have to do. You know, the law has its place here, of course, but ultimately it comes down to practical enforcement of those things. So,
Yeah. Hillary, how's it hitting home for you and your world? I know you work with a lot of probably very independent in the like, because you are at the ground level in terms of the work you do, speaking with a huge variety of people. Is this a scary topic for them? How does it hit with them? And how does somebody whack the mole when they're kind of running solo, in your opinion? Because that is like, that's a lot.
So want to whack the mole.
sounds like a weird euphemism. You got to be careful.
Yeah, right. Right. Call my lawyer. So do you mean as far as on the health side of things or in the media world that I'm in? Because those two things really fuse together. Which side?
But yeah, I would say yes. That is your heart.
The health side?
Well, the both. I think the
Yeah,
world that
I mean,
you exist in is the between. So
absolutely. I mean, your passion and purpose becomes your profession, right? That's kind of how I mention it. But for me, the problem and I just had this conversation yesterday, especially with the chat GPT. Now there's all this talk about them trademarking. Chat GPT is trademarking.
Yeah.
This could actually, and I'm sure Gordon has heard about this, but there's also those folks that are in the creative writing that this could replace them. And I'm a creative writer. I mean, I've been a writer for 30 years as part of my broadcasting work, but I'm not too worried about it because I think there's always going to be a face that people want to identify with. But even that's an area where we're seeing all this AI where there are public speakers that are artificial intelligence. And it's like, okay, that's not a real person. There's no emotion to that, but we're still buying into this, which is kind of crazy. And for me, I can't see the practitioner side of my business being replaced because I know if for therapy, you kind of would like to talk to maybe somebody who is trauma informed and actually knows what they're doing for a living. If they're helping you in your emotional well-being, I sure hope so. And on the other side of things with my media, you know, with the media side of my work, be it the podcast, holistically speaking, be it any of the shows that I do host outside of the podcasting world and television, I do find it to be quite, I don't want to say aggravating because this goes back to what you said, Gordon. Finding the person who maybe published it might be hard for some, but that's what I did with that situation where I saw my stuff on TikTok. I think the first thing to do is come from a place where you're not reacting, but rather take a step back and breathe for a second and see where is it? Because the more in chaos you are in your mind, you're not going to get anything done. You have to be in a place of calm, first of all, and try to hone in on where the source is. Like, what is the source of this and what the intention was? Now, going back to what Elsie was talking about with, oh my gosh, didn't even know this girl, people stealing podcasts like to that capacity is scary. I think it's really coming from a place of understanding what your own intention is. Always understand your own intention and what are you looking to get out of it from having that information? Because we can't be responsible for what anybody else does. We can only be responsible for ourselves, right? So look, there's two sides to it as well. You should be, what do they say about imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? So sometimes when I see my stuff out there, I'm like, cool. I'm obviously reached a point where people are using my material or want to hear my voice or like that sound bite. And I might kindly reach out to them if it's like an Instagram post or a meme or a quote. And I did that actually the other day, which is something that I learned from Elsie about SpeakPipe, right?
Yeah.
For that, because my last episode was like killer because of SpeakPipe. And I mentioned it in a comment and the person wrote back, "Oh, we found it from you." And I was like, that moment of just being acknowledged, because it goes back to being acknowledged, might be all you need, right? But if it's something that's level up and it has to do with health and wellness, I'm like, please credit, because are you getting the right information?
Mhm.
Maybe they need to know a little more. Don't just leave them and like drop them with something and then they don't have a source to go to. If you're going to use me as the source, refer back to me so that person can reach out if they have questions. Don't just drop it, right? And that's helping, that's making it a collaborative effort, a collective. Aren't we wanting to be part of a collective, right?
Mhm.
So that one extra step can make a big difference if somebody just says credit so and so, in my mind. And you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Same
credit where
platform
credit
there.
is due. Attribution
Yeah.
is huge. It
Yeah.
isn't the solution to everything, but
No.
it's certainly a great step forward. And
Yeah.
it's the honest approach. The intellectual honesty behind it
Yes.
is really key. Um, and I think that's ultimately, if you're not doing attribution and eventually you do get caught as being someone who knocks other people off or passes their stuff off as your own, that ultimately it hurts your reputation,
Yes.
or it can at least. And I think as a trained journalist, ethical journalism means talking about your transparency about your sources, maybe not identifying a confidential source, but that you have sources is an
Mhm.
important
Yes.
component.
In fact, that's the first thing I tell my students. I'm a college professor as well, and I teach journalism and I teach communications, and I've been doing
Mm,
it for 10 years. I teach what I do, right? And they get the benefit of also having a mental health practitioner as their professor as well, because they get tools of how to like deal with the calm and whatnot. But on the journalism side, I will not accept anything from them unless there is a source at the bottom. You send it to me without a source, we have a problem, because that's lazy, and it's also saying that a reputable source.
Mhm.
yeah.
That's another thing, because I don't want you copy and pasting and ripping something. I want you to use your brain, and I want you to rewrite in your voice, because that's the
Mhm.
other thing, is rewriting in your voice, right? And I'll tell you something that really triggers me, and I know it's kind of humorous and it's all over the internet, but y'all, Morgan Freeman and Keanu Reeves did not say all those things. Okay, how many quotes do we see out there with Morgan Freeman's face and Keanu Reeves? Enough already.
Well, I love the
Enough
ones where it's
already.
Abraham Lincoln talking about
Right.
social media. Those
Sometimes
kinds
I
of
do
things.
that with intention, because I'm like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
y'all are ridiculous. Keanu, I would give more credit to Oprah saying everything, right?
Yeah.
Before we just let's just let
Oh
Morgan
my
and Keanu
god.
have everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's not doing the
Well,
research.
Yeah.
let me
Go ahead,
answer this
Gordon.
question that's on the
Yeah,
screen here.
please do.
What are the chances I can use the likeness of a cartoon character as part of my logo? I
Mm.
would say that's 1 in 100 million or so. I'm sorry, Jesse. I actually, when I was in law school studying this stuff, I worked for one of the big animation studios, and my job was to put a stop to exactly this kind of a
Mm.
thing. And I can tell you that the law hasn't changed in 30 some years, and the owners of this stuff, their perspective on this hasn't changed in in all those decades either. There are a few exceptions where you see a cartoon character as a mascot or a logo. I myself am an Oregon Duck, and they use the Donald Duck character as their school mascot logo,
Mm.
and that is because there was a deal made by Walt himself back in the 1950s that made that possible. And he for whatever reason, he had some affinity for the Oregon school and decided to let them do it. But that's the exception rather than the rules. So you can go ask. It can't hurt to ask, but don't be surprised if the answer is no. Unless it's a 100-something-year-old character, then maybe you can get away with it.
Yeah, in the
Mm.
public domain. Amy writes in. By the way, thanks everybody who's watching and listening and hanging out with us both now and in the future. We have such a great group of people who are with us every week, and some people that pop in, and we are beyond grateful because that helps this discussion stay alive when we are not live. And that is why we are all here, is not to resolve all of podcasting or media's problems, but simply to make sure the warm fire stays lit under
Mm.
really, really important issues that we especially in podcasting, are in a place that we can still have an impact on. And Amy is at the beginning-ish of her podcast journey. So I love hearing questions from her. She's about a year in. She's got some sponsors. So she is like the ground level podcaster in terms of the people who are facing a lot of what we talk about and probably can take away the most in a lot of discussions. So thank you, Amy, for writing in. How about resharing social media posts? I do share posts, but I wouldn't without giving credit. I always tag the original poster. I do it to promote them, not myself, which makes perfect sense. But that is an interesting question. Any take on specifically that beginning part of like, where does that line start getting hazy?
It's very interesting because, Twitter made it super easy with the reshare quote tweet stuff. You can get quote a tweet, and a lot of people have been doing that. And it's something that culturally started to take form, right? In the massive exodus that folks are having from Twitter, I've been using a lot more of Mastodon. And Mastodon is a very complex platform in a lot of different ways. There's just there's a lot of things that are different about it. And there's a lot of things that are very simple about it and that it's super easy to use. Now, one of the fundamental philosophical differences from the OG Mastodon users is that the quote tweet, if you will, it's not a tweet, it's a toot on Mastodon. I'm not joking. And they don't allow for a quote toot, if you will. They just have something called boosts. And so boosts are essentially what a retweet is on Twitter. And so the only way that you can amplify somebody's message is by boosting that person only without commentary. And their thought about that is the fact that most people on Mastodon, the whole realm of that was to get conversations going. And they felt that if you are quote tweeting or quote tooting, then it would really move away from the conversation with the original poster. And you would be essentially starting your own conversation, commenting on the person, but not commenting to the person, which is what they wanted. They wanted somebody to comment to me, respond to me versus responding to the public and just using my content. Now, that is changing because there's a lot of people who are coming from Twitter who are used to wanting quote tweets, right? And so there are some instances, because that's the way Mastodon works, where, and I believe now to the core Mastodon possible new release, maybe it already has happened, it's going to allow for that quote toot functionality at some point, maybe, kind of, sort of, is what I've heard. Please don't quote me on that. But there is a need, because you can see that there's sometimes a good reason for doing that. Like for me, I just, did a live event. And if I see somebody promoting that live event, like if Libsyn promotes the live event, for me, it'd be awesome to just like promote it from my account, but using that original tweet, because what we want is for people to know that Libsyn's putting that on, or at least that's what I want, that Libsyn's putting that on, but I'm in it. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to have a conversation I don't want to have a conversation with that. So I see the benefit of it. That's my take on that.
You appreciate that. It sounds like Amy is a fan. I am also of the fan of the concept. I've started to dip my toes into the Mastodon world. It seems like if people are there, especially if the podcasting community is moving there, that is a place that I want to be. So it's cool to know that that's a place that we can go if Twitter makes us uncomfortable for any reason. And there are certainly a variety of reasons that someone might be uncomfortable right now. It seems like there's confusion around where money goes and how money is used on the platform, which is great that that's a question, because nobody ever stops and questions Facebook or Meta or Alphabet, Google. It's very rare that we get questions about where is the money going and how is it being used behind the scenes that then impacts some of those retweets, impacts some of those algorithms. So I couldn't be a bigger fan of Mastodon's social networking that's not for sale. Like, that's a pretty big statement, and I really like it. That's really, really fantastic. I want to toss it really just out to the group right now at this point, because the Twitter and Mastodon thing, to me, brings up such a host of possible pieces for a podcaster specifically, since the name of the game, if you follow podcasts about podcasts or industry podcasts, whether it be with Libsyn or She Podcasts or with Buzzsprout, where I follow some things as well, the podcast about podcasts is constantly a question of searchability, of visibility. And I think as a common podcaster early on, especially, I felt desperate because it seemed like attention is what I was supposed to be seeking. And some of these platforms that do things that maybe don't feel as good when it comes to attribution, even, and when it comes to giving credit to creators. Does anyone have any strong feelings that they want to share on that? I just kind of want to throw out an open-ended question, because I think this is a time in history that we can, like, it's okay to get on Facebook and get on some of those platforms right now. They're down. I want to get them. Gordon, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
You look great though.
Trying to be respectful, but what I was saying is, one thing I would just want to add to the conversation is that, even though Mastodon has this different approach to the retweeting, I guess it is, or whatever you want to call it, where there's a will, there's a way. People will find a way to capture a screenshot and post it somewhere else, or copy the text and copy and paste, and those kinds of things. So it's really incumbent on those of us who know or understand this on a little higher level to educate everybody else on, so that the will is to do things the right way, rather than just, what's expeditious and what feels good in the moment. Let's train ourselves with some best practices and our communities to respect the intellectual property, the intellectual contributions that other people make, even if you don't think of it necessarily as property. And there's a big debate about whether what comes out of our brains should be property right off the bat. And the law doesn't protect it all, but a lot of it is can be protected, I should say. So we need to, I think, just do a better job of building a community around the idea of the value of the contribution being something to honor.
I love that. Can I play off of that a little bit?
Please.
Gordon, that's awesome. This, I think, goes back to the whole idea of really the collective and the community. And if we look at things that way, and we see that somebody says something touching, moving, and or inspiring that really resonates with you, that you are so taken by it that you want to share it. Well, good gosh. I mean, already right there, you've been impacted by it. You want to share it with your community. Imagine what can happen if you start collaborating with that person that you shared it with. And I'm not saying like every person that you tag or reference. I mean, I could tag Mel Robbins right now on a million different posts because I love her content, or Oprah or Jay Shetty. They're not going to be like, oh, let's do something together. They might at some point, who knows? But I'm just saying, even with the smaller folks, like the independent podcasters, the people that are looking to build their coaching community, or anyone that's an entrepreneur, business person that's just looking to have a good vibe around them and have good people around them. If we start focusing on the collaboration possibility by, wow, I love what you shared, Gordon, that was amazing, and tag you and just have a conversation, send you a DM. Love that. In addition to just reposting, then you're not only just reposting and maybe tagging the person, you're being like, love the content, love what you share.
And that's encouraging me to do more of it,
And
which
it's
is
also,
the whole
yes, right,
essence of why we have intellectual property law at all, is to foster the creation of more stuff that grows the I don't even know what the word I'm looking for, but you know what I'm saying? We expand the conversation.
We're fostering something positive.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
In that way, I'm encouraging and hopefully inspiring you to keep doing what you're doing. You don't need my validation, but it's nice to be validated.
Absolutely.
And then in turn, you're like, I dig what this chick's saying. I dig what this gal's saying. Maybe we foster a relationship and a collaboration, and before I know it, Gordon and Hillary are doing something where we're helping each other out. And I have to say, like, there's so many communities like that I've come into, one being She Podcast, because of that. And I know that it comes back to community. It always comes back to community. Y'all, we can't do things alone. It just doesn't work like that.
So let's lift each other up. I'm going to use one of those expressions. I don't know how to attribute it, but a rising tide lifts all boats. So if we all try to do better, everybody around us will also try to do better. And
I think Morgan Freeman said that.
Sure wasn't Abraham Lincoln.
Or Keanu, I'm not sure.
it would sound almost as good as when Gordon says it in that perfect podcast.
Oh my God.
pitch.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
Now somebody's going to grab that snippet of me saying it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
As long as they tag you, you're okay.
Be my guest.
That's great. But that definitely touches on it, is connection and collaboration and building community. It's all about that.
Is there ever a time when you all think it could help? Elsie, I want to flip it your way. Is there a time when it can help? Is there a time when this would be appropriate, when you would look at a situation like we've discussed today? Like, I'm going to ask a weird question, so be prepared. Is there a time where somebody could copy paste, not attribute, and as a society, as a culture, as a people, where we would look at that circumstance and say, I think that was for the right reasons, even if it's not legal?
Oh, in terms of legality. Oh, yeah. There are times, there's a lot of folks online, like with anything else, you have to look at the other side of the equation, right? So there are a lot of folks, especially activists that really do a lot of the work on social and are working under the guise of a pseudonym where you don't really know what their names are. And you have, a little cartoon kind of thing or as their little avatar, and there is a name that isn't really a proper name, right? And the movement itself is the thing that you quote at times. It's that ability to be able to put that stuff out there, simply because a lot of the work for activists, it can at some point be threatening, life-threatening, dangerous for them to keep a sense of privacy for themselves. Now, even in that light, though, you would still need to be able to at least quote the movement, if you will. And I have seen some although I really would love to know who said this. There's a lot of those anonymous quotes that are out there that I've seen where I'm like, that's a phenomenal quote. And I haven't been able to find who said that thing, right? And it would be great to be able to know who said that thing, because there's been a couple of times too where there's something that somebody said that I'm like, ooh, that's really great. And that really hits home. And then later on, I'm like, I'm not sure that I really like that person anymore. You know what I mean? I'm not sure that person is somebody that I want to be quoting, even though the quote is great, right?
That's
so
fair.
there's a lot of nuance that starts to come from that. So I think it's a double-edged sword to some degree. And there's also like, okay, so this has nothing to do with the question that you just had, but it's somebody that, so I wrote a piece at the end of the year that was talking about my experience doing the feed for, year number 9. And I had some thoughts around it. It was a little recap for the end of 2022. And one of the things that I wrote in that little piece was one of the headers of my piece said, "The grind is real, the joy is essential." Like that's what I wrote, right? So that was one of the things. That was a header. I remember I was writing and that came up real quick because I was trying to okay, what really quantifies my idea around this thing, and I put that up there. I don't know if that was the first time I said that, but I put that there. And then I had somebody from the She Podcast group that it really resonated with, not from my original post, but because I copied and pasted my own work into a comment to answer a question within the group. And then she created a piece of art with it. So she it was really cool. Well, she wrote that, and then she actually wrote the opposite, which I didn't say, beneath it, that says, "The grind is essential, the joy is real." And so depending upon how she's feeling, she'll turn it around, and she has the opposite moving on it. And I thought, oh, that's so neat. But it's like, did I really say, did I need attribution for that? That's really neato. I think that's so cool. I like that she put it out and she built on it, right? Creative Commons, which is fine. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's fine, but then what if she started to sell this, right?
Yeah, that is a really, really fantastic example because it brings in all of the elements of media all at once. You have the text, which is the quote. You have the visual, which is literally like basically all the social platforms. And we haven't even touched the fact that you could overdub it on a program like the script or many others. So it can get out of hand really quickly. If, like we said earlier, that Gordon mentioned it, the first person kind of has a lot of weight on their shoulders of who was the first person to not do it, because that is potentially where it's at. That brings us back around to podcasters, because this is a growing industry. So anytime I think of the greater media discussion, the greater journalistic history, it's like we are building on the shoulders of giants who have had some of these problems before, which is great because it means we're not doing it alone sometimes. And one of the growing trends in podcasting is review podcasts. I have talked about doing it. Elsie, I think you've talked about doing it. I've heard it in a lot of places where people want to, because again, that visibility piece and helping our friends and the people we love to listen to, helping them get more listens by providing a review, which is very similar to what socials are doing with things like remixes and things of that nature. And that brings up what is, I think, going to be a burgeoning issue in podcasting, which is fair use when it comes to reusing that content. If I do a review podcast, can I just play a clip of somebody's if I'm going to be talking about them and promoting them, and I'll pass it down to the man with the law, the law man.
Hillary, you've got the journalism background here too, so chime in. But I'll say that the answer, whenever you're talking about fair use, the answer is maybe, sometimes, sorta. And it depends, as the lawyers were trained to say. It depends, right? Because there are a lot of different factors to consider. Just as a little bit of background, fair use is a free expression driven exception or defense, really, to claims of copyright infringement. We as a society value certain kinds of conversation and discussion and free expression. So we've created this defense that says if you're doing it for the right reasons, under the right circumstances, it's not infringement. Purposes like criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, that's the kinds of things we want to promote and foster by sort of taking the infringement consequence out of things. But in order to evaluate it, you have this complicated multi-factor test that we have to go through. None of the single factors is dispositive. And this is where a lot of the misconceptions come up. The I'm not making any money from it is not one of the factors. The well, I only took 4 bars. Well, there's no rule of thumb. It might be less, it might be more, depending on the amount and substantiality of what you're taking. What is the nature of what you're doing, the purpose and character of the thing you're doing? If it's journalism or cultural commentary and criticism, that's where reviews come in. It's criticism of the film or of the podcast episode or of the music or whatever. As long as you're not taking the whole thing and creating a substitute listening experience, you may be on solid enough ground. We're waiting now, just so everybody understands, this summer we will see the Supreme Court of the United States issue a ruling in a case called the Warhol Foundation versus Goldsmith, in which the photographer who took the iconic photograph of the music artist Prince, that was later turned into a magazine cover by Andy Warhol. And there's a dispute over whether or not the later reuse of that image amounted to copyright infringement or fair use. And so the Supreme Court's going to give us some answers on how transformative does something have to be in order to be fair use. I'm sorry, Hillary, it looks like you're ready to jump in.
No, I'm fascinated by this, and I'm so glad we're talking about this. And I love the link that was just added about fair use and the copyright. And Gordon, you're a wealth of information. It's really helpful, even for me as I sit here. So I just had a conversation yesterday with one of my clients. I've been hosting a health show, a travel show for CVS Health and Aetna for the past almost 4 or 5 years now. And we're getting ready to focus on mental health because Mental Health Awareness Month is in May. And one of the things I was asked, because I'm so present on social media on pretty much every platform, is I did a video that there's a big trend right now with there's a lot of trends out there, but I did a video that was trending And they were asking, my producer was like, can we use that in the video as B-roll? And their fear and their concern is, can we pull this from your TikTok? Which, by the way, TikTok is not my platform of choice. I came to it like 2.5 years too late, but I'm still on there and I repurpose. Can we use your TikTok within the B-roll? Is it okay? Is it a fair use issue? And I'm like, well, people are ripping stuff all the time. I mean, you see it, all of these different platforms that exist, these handles that exist, where they're pulling all the greats that have these moments where they're saying something.
Mhm.
And I don't really know the answer to that. I imagine if it's on my TikTok, if they use it as B-roll just to show that I did something, it is fair use.
Well, it's not only fair use. You're in a position to grant them permission anyway.
Right.
But were they allowed to do that with somebody else's TikTok without asking for
Yeah.
permission? Again, it depends.
I
is
mean,
the
could
answer.
TikTok come after them? No, you can't use that because it's, that's the real question. I think they're concerned about that, but it's like,
Yeah, there are
who's
questions
not
about,
using videos? What's that?
right. Yeah, there are questions about the look and feel of the
Right.
of the site for TikTok as well. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and screen captures is a big area for this.
Yeah.
Um, It is definitely a challenge, and is not something that ordinary creators on a day-to-day basis should be assuming anything about
Right.
fair use. My biggest fear, and the thing that I hear about often, is, well, I'll just use fair use, and they'll just assume that, well, if I don't do that, if I do it this way, I'm okay. The problem is we have to do the analysis for each individual clip or piece that we're using, and there are times when you might think it is, and then someone else thinks otherwise, and then you have a DMCA takedown, or worse, you have to hire someone like me to defend you, either in a letter writing campaign or worse yet, in court. And relying on fair use as your excuse for taking things, I think generally is not a good idea, unless you really can't get it any other way, and you're doing important transformative stuff.
Yeah, C&D letters are never fun to get.
Yeah. No
Nobody wants
doubt,
one of
no
those.
doubt, no doubt. My favorite part of the whole conversation, of course, is the only way we could possibly even kind of know for sure is if we had a lawyer on staff at all times to look at every single use that we had, and somehow the attorney's college roommate would be the one prosecuting if it wasn't fair. So it's therein lies the lawmakers feed the lawmakers sometimes, huh?
And we love to have the conversation. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
My dad was an attorney, at criminal defense lawyer, and so many of his friends are lawyers in different areas. And he always used to say, surround yourself with people that massage your neurons, meaning like, don't always have the same kind of person around or the same kind of attorney, or have different people that do different things, right? Because we need our posse of where to go, people that we
like
trust.
Exercise builds strong muscles, mental exercise builds a strong mind. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was Keanu Reeves that said that.
Doubt. As we get close to wrapping what has been a lively and fun Bray, could you put that on the side pretty please? Thank you. Discussion on the reuse, and like so many discussions that we've had on this show over this season, I think we're at episode 10 now, and we have covered a lot of topics that, like, honestly, every time I reflect on them, we could do a whole branch off series of another 13 episodes on each topic, because there's just so much to consider all the time. I want to start wrapping with a theoretical, and I think y'all are going to like it. So I'm going to give this one to Elsie, because we are getting close to wrap. So Elsie, I'm going to let you take this one. And I would love it if you could provide maybe a couple who we should follow and attribute and share, because one of the great benefits of the remix, reuse, and reviews process is if you go about it the right way, and if you attribute where attributes due, maybe you even invite someone on like Hillary to have a conversation with you, all of a sudden it becomes very above board and could potentially really help them. And I think in the world we exist in with podcasts, there are so many worthy people, there are so many worthy sources of information and knowledge and hope, and you are someone who I would trust to guide us in the right direction about people like yourself who I want to go retweet, or I want to go onto Mastodon and retweet after this. And I would love to know if there's somebody or a few people that you would like us, or even a repository, a directory that we should be going to and looking to, because I want to help promote some people with this topic today.
Oh my gosh, this is a rough one. Well, first of all, Renee Brooks is incredible from Black Girl Lost Keys. We have already mentioned her before. I think that she's a plethora of information on Twitter, and I really gravitate towards her because she's probably one of the only Black women that is really addressing neurodiversity out there. Because as we know, most things in the medical industry and all the stuff are very leaning towards just white men as a whole, really, and women in ADHD is a whole other thing, and then Black women or women of color with ADHD is a whole other just conversation. So the nuance that she brings to the table to me is really a fundamental thing that I really love to have when it comes to Twitter. And I love her simply because of the way that her brain works, and the way that she puts herself out there, and she's got a lot of very unique, original thoughts, and that is really, I just really love to see what she puts out there for sure. So that's where I'm sticking it at now, because there's many more people that I follow, but it's like way too many thoughts in my head. So she's top of mind just because I've been reading her stuff. So that's for me. That's what I would say.
Love it. Did we lose Trevor?
We might have lost Trevor, or maybe
I'll just say
my
ahead,
cat
Trevor.
bumped us. Go ahead, Gordon.
Oh,
you got it. You got the mic.
The workshop that's on the screen was last week, but it'll be coming around again. So you can click on that link and it'll take you over to a wait list page, I'm pretty sure. And we'll get you the next time through. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Hillary, anyone you would like to same for you? Because again, this is a tool as well. This is the part where it's helpful. So I want to take this opportunity as we wrap within all the concern and potential fear to also use this as a great resource when we use it the right way, like all good tools.
So are we talking about in the podcasting world?
Yeah, hit me. Or any creator that you think is really making an impact. It's the year of...
Oh gosh, so many amazing creators that I feel so inspired by. But hey, I'm going to throw it back to you, Else, because I love the feed. I love the podcast. I'm learning so much as a Libsyn host and user as well. And there's, I don't know half of what I need to know. So, and I've had my podcast for almost 3 years now, and it's very different from the regular podcasting, broadcasting world. The world of podcasting is very different from television and print, and I'm learning. So I appreciate you and your space and learning from you, and just really being open-minded to new creators and possibilities. I mean, I can go on about so many creators that I feel are truly in the space, but I'm going to throw it back to you, Elsie.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I appreciate
Not because I'm here,
that.
just because I mean it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yay.
I'm going to highlight I'm going to highlight a couple of my favorite creators, if you don't mind. On I don't remember what his platform of choice. I think it's probably Instagram, but Nas Daily is a guy from, I want to say, Palestinian fella who is he just does great inspiring content. He visits places all over the world and just sort of deep dive into the culture and the people in just a couple of minute short videos. But they do a great job, and they've got a really positive mission behind what they're doing. So check out Nas Daily. And the podcaster I really admire, Jennifer Briney, and her show Congressional Dish does a great job diving deep into what's going on in government in the United States.
That's
good. She brings a tremendous perspective to things and really does the research. She's doing real journalism, and I bet I always like that. So Congressional Dish is that show. That's great.
And real journalism, in my mind, and this is something I share with my students all the time, be a compassionate journalist.
Yes.
That is so important. We're losing sight of that. And that is an area that I think is so important to focus on, especially in this day and age where, and I work in trauma, that secondary trauma is so common for journalism, and we see it all the time. You don't have to be present and be the person going through it, but we are dealing with it. So coming from that place of compassion is so important as a journalist, and it's been lost.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
True.
And as I always say, I won't stop beating that drum. Podcast, the industry of podcast has this platform because it is new. It has this platform because we do stand on the backs and the shoulders of giants in the media industry who have screwed some stuff up, but also have taught us some of the ways and cleared some of the paths and now provide us some of the experts like Gordon Firemark, who is an entertainment lawyer and is now the podcast lawyer. You know, like resources like that are invaluable to us as independent creators. And I just want to quickly shout out our group Creator Lab. That is what we seek to do, is continue to push conversations like this. Not because we are going to resolve them, not because we are right, but because we want to keep them on the forefront and hopefully have an impact and keep them going. On behalf of this whole effort, which again, I think we're about 10 episodes in, and I feel like it gets deeper and better every time. I cannot thank Elsie, you for leading us in all the ways you lead us, including inspiring us in pre-pro, bringing the fire when we need the fire, calling us to attention when we need the attention, and keeping us on our P's and Q's. It is invaluable what you bring to us as a group, and I cannot thank you enough for that. So thank you. Hillary, of course, thank you so much for stopping by. To have any guest pop in for a whole session is amazing, let alone somebody with a journalism background who has the credentials to back the words. Thank you for being that person with us. It is great. Also, I appreciate the vibes and the plants and the salt lamp. It keeps me in the right place. Thank you. And Gordon, as always, you are the man with the don't get busted. You know what I always say. It's not that this is legal advice. It's that it's going to give you some guidance. Always consult your personal attorney. And if you need some help, consult Gordon. He is here to protect you. He protects a lot of people in the podcast industry. And similar to Elsie in that way, has really provided such a foundation for us to try to continue to do the right thing in the right ways in this industry for the people that we care about, and they don't always look like us. So as we go off into the creator space after this, please go support the people that we talked about today. We will be sure to drop them in the notes. Bree, in the background, thank you so much. We could not do this without you. Big clap for you, Bree. Next week, we have what has been a topic for so long. This is a build-up topic.
Oh my God.
Ratings, safe spaces or targets. We will get into how our world regulates, both from a legal, from a social, and from an ethical place. Are these safe spaces or are these targets? When we create these subcategories and groups, it is going to be a great discussion, I have no doubt. Everybody who listened and tuned in today, everybody who supports us, everybody who was at PodFest last week, again, thank you so much. We wouldn't do this for no one, because we really want to create a movement around the ethical portion of this. There are so many considerations, and how you feel as a human being about the people that you care about is so important, and that is called ethics. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Bree, roll that end credit, and we will see you all next week at 8 a.m. Pacific, which is 11 a.m. Eastern. See y'all.
Yay.